The conference room was silent, thick with the smell of stale coffee and cheap air freshener. My Aunt Carol sat at the head of the long table, a smug smile plastered on her face. Next to her, my cousin Jessica was scrolling mindlessly through her phone, occasionally patting her mother's hand in a show of feigned support. They thought this meeting was a formality, the final step in securing a lifeline investment from some faceless corporation that would save their failing catering business. The company's lawyer, a man named Mr. Harrison, cleared his throat and shuffled his papers. He looked nervous, his eyes darting between me, standing quietly by the door, and my aunt. "Carol, Jessica," he began, his voice strained. "Thank you for coming. We have concluded the acquisition process. The contracts are signed and the funds have been transferred. Carol's Creations is now under new ownership." My aunt beamed, her smile widening. "Wonderful news, Mr. Harrison. We're so excited for this new chapter. When do we get to meet the new owner? Are they on a video call?" Mr. Harrison swallowed hard and gestured towards me. "There's no need for a call. The new owner is right here." The air crackled. Aunt Carol's smile froze, then collapsed into a mask of pure confusion. Jessica finally looked up from her phone, her brow furrowed. They both stared at me, this girl they had called a charity case, a burden, the girl they had worked to the bone for years without a single penny or word of thanks. They looked at my simple but well-tailored dress, my calm demeanor, and the cold, unyielding silence I held. They saw me, but they couldn't comprehend what they were seeing. My aunt's face, a canvas of disbelief, was a masterpiece I had waited a decade to paint. She didn't realize that the business she was so proud of was built entirely on my stolen work, and I had just bought back every last bit of it. You might be asking why I would buy a failing company just to face the people who tormented me. The answer starts with a broken childhood and a promise that was never kept. My world ended when I was 14. One moment, I had 2 loving parents who told me I was their greatest treasure. The next, I was an orphan standing at a gravesite, clutching a folded flag. My Aunt Carol was there, her arms wrapped around me in a show of public grief. "Don't you worry about a thing," she whispered, her voice oozing with a syrupy sympathy that I was too numb to recognize as fake. "I'll take care of you. Your family. After all, you'll be just like a daughter to me." It was a beautiful lie, and it was the last kindness she ever showed me. The guest room she had mentioned turned out to be a dusty, unheated attic space with a lumpy mattress on the floor. My cousin Jessica, who was my age, got a newly redecorated bedroom for her birthday that same month. While Jessica spent her afternoons with friends at the mall, I was given a list of chores. I did the dishes, the laundry, vacuumed the house, and mowed the lawn. My clothes were Jessica's stained, stretched-out hand-me-downs, while she paraded around in new outfits every week. At dinner, I was expected to serve everyone before I was allowed to eat, and often, by the time I sat down, the best food was already gone. The most painful part wasn't the work or the worn-out clothes. It was the constant dripping poison of her words. "You need to earn your keep," she'd say, watching me scrub the kitchen floor on my hands and knees. "You should be grateful. Do you have any idea what it costs to raise a teenager? You'd be on the street if it weren't for my good heart." She systematically dismantled my self-worth, brick by brick. I wasn't family. I was a transaction. I was her charity case, her live-in maid, and a constant reminder of how generous and noble she was. She made sure I understood that I was a ghost in her house, seen only when there was work to be done. This was my life for 4 years, a slow descent into invisibility. Then she decided to start a business, and my servitude took on a whole new dimension. When I turned 18, Aunt Carol announced her brilliant new venture. She was going to start a high-end catering company called Carol's Creations. She had always enjoyed cooking, but her skills were average at best. The real culinary talent in our family had been my mother, a woman who could turn simple ingredients into magic, and she had passed all of that magic on to me. From the age of 6, I was her little sous chef. The recipes that filled my mother's handwritten cookbook were my most precious inheritance, a tangible link to the love I had lost. Aunt Carol knew this, and she saw it not as a legacy to be cherished, but as a resource to be exploited. My college applications were lost in the mail. My guidance counselor was told I had decided to pursue a vocational path in the family business. Just like that, my future was stolen. I became the unpaid, unseen engine of Carol's Creations. I was the one who woke at 4 a.m. to bake pastries and stayed up past midnight scrubbing industrial-sized pots. I was the one who perfected my mother's recipes, scaling them for 50, 100, 200 people. I developed the menus, I managed the inventory, and I plated every single dish that left that kitchen. My hands were perpetually chapped, my arms dotted with burns from the ovens, my body aching with a fatigue that seeped into my bones. Meanwhile, Jessica was appointed the Director of Marketing and Client Relations. Her primary role was to pose for pictures with my food, posting them on Instagram with hashtags like Dr. Girlboss and Family Business. She would greet clients at events, smiling sweetly and accepting compliments for the delicious appetizers she had whipped up. She couldn't boil an egg. Aunt Carol handled the finances, marking up the prices on my labor and pocketing every dollar of profit. I was kept in the back, hidden in the heat and steam of the kitchen. If a client ever peeked in, my aunt would introduce me as my niece, a little helper we're training up. I wasn't a chef. I wasn't a partner. I was a helper. And for years I believed it, until one event pushed me past my breaking point. The tipping point came in the form of the annual Mayor's Charity Ball. It was the most prestigious event in the city, and landing the catering contract was a coup that could elevate Carol's Creations from a local service to a regional powerhouse. Aunt Carol secured it through relentless networking, but the execution fell entirely on my shoulders. The menu was a 5-course gourmet meal for 300 guests. For a solid month, I lived and breathed that event. I tested and retested every component, sourced every ingredient, and drew up a minute-by-minute schedule for the night. For the final 3 days, I didn't sleep at all, fueled by caffeine and sheer adrenaline. The night of the ball was a blur of frantic, perfect execution. Everything went off without a hitch. The food was hailed as a masterpiece. A few days later, Aunt Carol took Jessica and me out to a fancy restaurant to celebrate our success. For the first time in years, a tiny, foolish seed of hope sprouted in my chest. Maybe now she would finally see me. Maybe now I would get the credit I deserved. After we ordered, my aunt raised her wine glass. "A toast," she said, beaming, "to my brilliant daughter, Jessica. Her incredible social skills and keen eye for opportunity are the reasons we are where we are today. She is the future of this company." My stomach tightened. Jessica preened, soaking in the praise. And to celebrate her official promotion to Vice President of Operations, my aunt continued, "I have a little surprise." She slid a small gift-wrapped box across the table to Jessica. Inside was a key fob for a brand-new luxury SUV parked right outside. Jessica squealed with delight. I just sat there, my fork frozen halfway to my mouth, the hope in my chest curdling into a cold, hard knot of rage. I waited. I waited for her to even look at me, to offer a simple thank you. Nothing. Finally, I choked out the words, "And me?" Aunt Carol's warm expression vanished. She looked at me as if I were an insect. "What about you?" she said, her voice dripping with ice. You got a free meal and a front row seat to watch how a real business is run. You live under my roof and eat my food. You'd be nothing without me. You should be thanking me for the opportunity to learn. That was it. That was the moment the years of quiet suffering ended and the years of silent planning began. In that instant, I stopped being her victim and became her predator. I went home that night and didn't say a word. I walked past Jessica, who was showing off her new car to her friends on the driveway, and went straight up to my cold attic room. There were no tears. The searing rage had burned away all the sadness, leaving behind a diamond-hard clarity. My aunt was right about one thing. I had learned a lot. I had learned how to run a kitchen, how to manage inventory, how to please clients, and most importantly, I had learned that my work had value, a value she was determined to steal. But the lesson was over. Under the cover of darkness, I packed a single duffel bag. I took the few clothes that were truly mine, the small bundle of cash I had secretly saved from odd mending jobs, and the most important thing I owned, my mother's handwritten recipe book. I slipped out of the house at 3 a.m., the same time I would normally be waking up to start baking for her. I walked to the bus station and bought a one-way ticket to a city 500 miles away, a place where no one knew my name. As the bus pulled away, I didn't look back. There was nothing there for me. My new life was anything but glamorous. I rented a tiny, run-down room and got a job as a line cook in a greasy spoon diner. The work was grueling, the pay was minimum wage, but every dollar was mine. Every night I'd come home smelling of grease and cheap coffee, but I was free. I ate simple meals and saved every penny I could. But I wasn't just flipping burgers. After my shifts, while the city slept, I was building my arsenal. I enrolled in online community college courses, Business 101, Principles of Marketing, Supply Chain Management. I studied until my eyes burned. Then I bought a cheap, used laptop and started a blog. I called it The Alchemist's Kitchen. Anonymously, I began to publish my recipes, my mother's recipes, the ones that had built Carol's creations. I posted them with detailed instructions, scientific explanations for the techniques, and the stories behind them. I was taking back what was mine, one blog post at a time. At first, it was just a few dozen followers, then a few hundred. People were drawn to the stories behind the food and the foolproof nature of the recipes. They left comments saying, "This is the exact recipe my grandmother used to make." Or, "I've tried a dozen versions of this dish, and yours is the only one that tastes authentic." Of course it was authentic. It was born from real love, not from a desire for profit. Within 6 months, my little anonymous blog had a loyal, thriving community. The turning point came when a major food magazine wrote a feature on hidden gems of the internet and highlighted The Alchemist's Kitchen, praising its genius-level technique and soulful writing. My traffic exploded overnight. That article caught the attention of a man named David Chen, a semi-retired tech mogul who now invested in passion projects. He sent a message through my blog's generic contact form. "I don't know who you are," he wrote, "but I've been in business long enough to recognize a brilliant operator when I see one. The way you describe process optimization and ingredient sourcing tells me you're more than just a cook. I want to invest in whatever you want to build." We met in a quiet cafe. I was terrified, but I walked in with a 40-page business plan I had been secretly refining for over a year. I didn't just show him recipes. I showed him a vertically integrated business model for a line of gourmet meal kits, complete with market analysis, profit projections, and a 3-year growth strategy. He read the entire proposal right there at the table, his expression shifting from curiosity to profound respect. When he looked up, He simply said, "How much do you need?" I asked for a seed investment that made my hands shake, and he didn't even blink. My only condition was absolute anonymity. We formed a holding company, Phoenix Enterprises, to be the public entity. I would be the ghost in the machine, the invisible creator. He agreed, intrigued by my mystique. We launched Aura, a line of premium food products based on my blog's recipes. In 18 months, it was in stores nationwide, a runaway success celebrated for its quality and integrity. I was now a wealthy woman, and nobody knew it was me. While my company, Aura, was quietly becoming a household name, I kept a close watch on Carol's creations from afar. It was remarkably easy. I followed their business page on social media and set up news alerts. The decline was faster and more spectacular than I could have ever imagined. Without my recipes and my labor, the entire operation fell apart. The first sign of trouble was the food itself. The vibrant, beautifully plated dishes on their social media feed were replaced by blurry, unappetizing photos. Jessica, who had once preened next to my culinary art, now posed with sad-looking trays of beige food. Then came the public reviews. "What happened to this place? It used to be incredible. Now it's barely edible," one Yelp review read. Another, from a bride, was heartbreaking. "They ruined my wedding. The food was 2 hours late. It was cold, and the cake I paid a fortune for looked like a lopsided mess. The owner, Carol, was rude and refused to give us a refund." The one-star ratings piled up, each one a testament to their incompetence. I read that for one corporate event, they tried to replicate my signature lemon herb chicken, likely using the recipe from my public blog. But they failed miserably. They didn't understand the technique. They served dry, flavorless chicken that led to a wave of terrible feedback. They had the notes, but they could never replicate the music. My aunt, blinded by her own ego, couldn't see the real problem. Instead of hiring a skilled chef, she cut costs. She bought cheaper ingredients, which only made the food worse. Jessica, the so-called vice president, was useless in a crisis. Her solution to bad reviews was to delete them or post defensive, misspelled replies that only made them look more unprofessional. They took out loans to cover their losses, sinking deeper and deeper into debt. They mortgaged their house to keep the business afloat. I watched it all from my quiet apartment, tracking their downfall through public records and local news reports. They were drowning. Finally, the news I had been waiting for appeared in a small business journal. "Carol's Creations is seeking an emergency buyout to avoid insolvency." The trap was set. All I had to do was spring it. My investor, David, was amused when I told him I wanted to acquire a small, failing catering company. I didn't give him the details. I simply said it was a personal project. He respected my privacy and connected me with his best corporate lawyer, a shrewd and discreet man named Mr. Harrison. Through Mr. Harrison, my holding company, Phoenix Enterprises, made a formal offer to acquire the assets and brand of Carol's Creations. I was insulated by 2 layers of corporate structure and a legal firewall. To my aunt, the offer came from a prestigious law firm representing a faceless East Coast investment group. I designed the offer myself, with surgical precision. It wasn't a generous offer, but it was a lifeline. The amount was just enough to pay off all their business loans, settle their accounts with furious vendors, and, most importantly, clear the second mortgage they had taken out on their house. After all the debts were settled, they would be left with a small, almost pitiful amount of cash, enough to feel like they hadn't lost everything, but not enough to ever feel successful. It was an offer built to be accepted without question. And they did. Mr. Harrison told me they barely negotiated. They were so desperate to escape the mountain of debt that they saw the offer as a miracle. The final, crucial piece of the puzzle was the employment agreement. I had Mr. Harrison include a clause in the contract offering Carol the position of general manager and Jessica the role of assistant manager, both subject to a standard 90-day probationary review by the new ownership. They signed it eagerly. In their minds, they had not only dodged bankruptcy, but had also secured salaried positions. They believed the new anonymous owners recognized their supposed value. They thought they were being rewarded for their brand. The irony was exquisite. They had no idea they were formally agreeing to become my employees. The day the sale was finalized, I signed the closing documents in my apartment 1,000 miles away. Carol's Creations was officially mine. All that was left was to introduce myself. We are now back where we started, in that stale conference room, with Mr. Harrison's announcement hanging in the air like a guillotine. The new owner is right here. I stepped forward from the doorway, my heels clicking softly on the cheap laminate floor. I walked to the table and placed my leather portfolio down in front of the empty chair opposite my aunt. Her face was a storm of confusion and dawning horror. Jessica just looked blank, as if her brain couldn't process the information. "Hello, Aunt Carol," I said, my voice even and calm. "You might not recognize me without a dirty apron and flour on my face." Her jaw worked, but no sound came out. She stared at me, then at Mr. Harrison, then back at me, searching for the punchline to a joke that wasn't coming. What is this?" she finally stammered. "This is impossible." "It's very possible," I replied, my voice devoid of any emotion. "It's called a leveraged buyout. My company, Phoenix Enterprises, has acquired all assets and liabilities of Carol's Creations, which means, as of this morning, I am your boss." I turned my gaze to my cousin, who was now pale with shock. "Jessica, let's start with you. Your probationary employment contract is terminated, effective immediately. Your position was based on nepotism and a complete lack of verifiable skills. You are a liability to the brand. Security will escort you from the building now. Please return your company phone on the way out." Jessica burst into tears, a loud, ugly wail. "You can't do this." I ignored her and turned my full attention back to Carol, who was trembling with fury. "As for you, Aunt Carol, your position as general manager is also terminated. However, your contract allows for reassignment. Your new role is head pot washer. Your shift starts tomorrow at 5 a.m. You'll be responsible for all sanitation duties in the kitchen you once claimed to run." Her face turned a shade of mottled purple. "You ungrateful little witch! After everything I did for you!" I leaned forward slightly, my voice dropping to a cold whisper, using the exact words she had seared into my soul. "You should be thanking me for the opportunity. After all, you need to earn your keep." I nodded to the door, and 2 security guards stepped inside. My aunt's world had just ended, and I was the one who had signed the order. Aunt Carol erupted. Her face, which had been pale with shock, turned a blotchy, furious red. "You have no right!" she shrieked, her voice cracking. "I took you in. I fed you. This is my business, my name." The security guards moved towards her, and she flinched back, her tirade continuing. "You'll run it into the ground. You were always a jealous, worthless girl, and you'll be nothing without my guidance." Jessica just sobbed, burying her face in her hands as the other guard gently but firmly guided her towards the door. It was a pathetic, chaotic scene, but I felt nothing. I simply stood and watched as they were escorted out of the building and out of my life, their angry shouts echoing down the hallway before being cut off by the closing door. Silence descended upon the room. The only other person present was a young line cook named Maria, who had always been kind to me in the old days. She was staring at me, her eyes wide with a mixture of terror and awe. I gave her a small, reassuring smile. "Don't worry, Maria. The madness is over." That day, I addressed the entire staff. I told them my story. I told them that the company would be completely rebranded as Legacy Kitchens, in honor of my mother. I announced that every employee was receiving an immediate 25% raise, full health benefits, and paid vacation time. I tore up the old employee handbook, which was full of my aunt's punitive and demoralizing rules, and promised a new culture based on respect, collaboration, and a shared passion for creating beautiful food. I wasn't just taking over a business, I was liberating it. A year later, Legacy Kitchens was the most sought-after catering company in the state. Our schedule was booked solid for months. The staff was happy and loyal, and the food had never been better. As for my aunt and cousin, their fall was as swift as my rise. After being forced to sell their house to cover personal debts, Carol ended up working as a cashier at a discount grocery store, her face a permanent mask of bitterness. Jessica, without a work history or any discernible skills, bounced between temp jobs, constantly complaining about her misfortune. I didn't seek out this information, but it found its way to me. I took no joy in it, but I felt it was just. They hadn't been victims of a cruel niece. They were the architects of their own demise. My revenge was never about destroying them. It was about building myself. It was about taking back my mother's legacy and my own life, proving once and for all that I was never nothing. I was everything.